Hello, guys, and welcome back to Joe's Ventures. And today we're doing another episode of our reviews for DLC for Jurassic World Evolution 3. So, I know I'm a bit late for this one. I've actually resigned from my job and I'm getting a new one and I'm moving around. Just a bit of emotional stuff happening at the moment. But yeah, I'm finally feeling ready to kind of get stuck into this one, so I'm really excited. So, the Crocodilia Coast is a very cool DLC. It was actually just about perfect until they gave us the new species. They gave us the Shonisaurus and the Styxosaurus again. I'm not going to cover them in this episode because I've already covered them in Jurassic World Evolution 2 ones. But yeah, a very, very cool pack with some really cool animals. A lot of Triassic animals and, of course, Deinosuchus. A lot of people very much like Deinosuchus. So, very, very interesting one. Yeah, other than, reselling stuff, and I know they did add technically new content because they had to do this dimorphism and the babies and stuff like that. Whether you fall on that spectrum, I don't think it was okay. I think if they had kept the same price and added the two, then maybe sure, or maybe had them had half off, maybe that would work. But yeah, I think that was a little bit scummy. But yeah, it's an opinion thing. But it's cool that we're getting them back in the game. I'm glad we're getting them back in the game, at least. But yeah, we've got three really cool new animals, so that's something really to look forward to, along with some new scenery pieces and stuff like that. But we're going to be looking at the animals today. Lots of crocodilians and, archosaurs and stuff. So we're going to be starting off today with Desmatosuchus, a really, really cool herbivorous crocodilian.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome Desmatosuchus to the park.
Okay. Let's have a look. See, are they going to do that? No, it's not going to do it. I think we'll have a look at you since you're posing so nicely for us. Look at that. Look at that cool boy. So this is Desmatosuchus. So Desmatosuchus, which means a link, a Desmos link, and Suchus crocodile. These guys are an extinct Archosaur from the Aetosauridae, or was an Aetosaur, which is a very interesting group of kind of ankylosaurs before they were ankylosaurs, a group of like herbivorous crocodilians. Very interesting groups of animals. They lived in North America and potentially in India during the late Jurassic, so between 228 to 210 million years ago. So these guys were quite a large quadrupedal reptile, measuring about 4.5 meters to over 5 meters, or 15 to 16 feet long, and weighed between 280 to 300 kilograms, or about 620 to 660 pounds. So you can see they look very, as I mentioned, very superficially like archosaurs. You can see they've got these large scutes and stuff like that, and the scapulae have got these really large horns on them. Very similar to something like a sauropelta and stuff like that. Kind of like the ankylosaurs before they were ankylosaurs. Very interesting shape to them. So you can see got that going on. Looks really, really cool. Their forelimbs are also much shorter than the hindlimbs, with the humeri less than 2/3 the length of the femurs. They've also got a small skull that was between 37 centimeters long, 18 centimeters wide, and 15 high. And the brain was quite firmly fused within the skull roof and palate. And the premaxilla, you can see almost like there, it's almost got like a shovel shape to it. So likely would have been using that for rooting around in the ground and stuff like that. They also had very thin volmers as well, and their nares were quite large. They had 5 or 6 teeth in their lower jaw, and a toothless beak on the end. And about half the length was lower jaw, but they did also have quite a bit of teeth and very much peg-like teeth, which likely would have been for eating plants. These guys were suspected to be herbivores. So individuals as Desmatosuchus were heavily armored. So the carapace that they had, the armors that they had, was made up of 2 rows of medial scutes and then supported by 2 more rows of lateral scutes. So you can see that's the medial, so middle, and lateral, the side. So you can see that's the medial and lateral there. Very interesting there. The lateral scutes are well-developed spine-like processes. You can see that going on there. That pointed out laterally and also posteriorly. So it went out and curved back. And there were typically 5 rows of spikes that increased in size, and the front spikes were much larger, so this one was kind of long and recurved, so that's that big shoulder spike. And then the 4th spike varies a lot in specimens and is shorter than the 5th in all of them. And the only known species of Aetosaur that have these spikes. Most of them were just a little bit more rounder and drab in that way. So we'll have a look at you. I love how you're posing. So these guys were first found in the 19th century when E.D. Cope classified armor from the Dockham group as a new species, Episosaurus halucis, and they later classified a partial skeleton of the Tescovas formation as Desmatosuchus. And a revision actually showed that lecture type of that one actually would be referable to Desmatosuchus, but inside isn't. So it's a pneumodubium, and then got Desmatosuchus lumped into it. So very interesting there. And in terms of its cladistics, it is, as mentioned, Aetosaur, a group of herbivorous crocodilians. Its closest relatives, it's actually in its own family, Desmatosuchidae. So its most closest relatives are Asunisuchus jeffroni and Leucosuchus hunti, but also there's other like Typothorax and Paratypothorax and some other Stagnelopes and some very interesting sort of Aetosaurs and stuff like that. The Jurassic is severely underrated in all paleomedia. There's so many weird animals from the Jurassic. They actually, a lot of them look like dinosaurs before they were dinosaurs. So there were bone-headed dinosaurs before they were, these guys. There were like pachycephalosaurs before there was pachycephalosaurs. These are ankylosaurs before there were ankylosaurs. Hell, we're going to see the animal next, Postosuchus, was almost like a T-Rex before there was a T-Rex. So, very, very interesting. So in terms of its paleobiology, bones and armor pieces of these guys are quite abundant in the Dockham, Chinle, and Post quarry. That indicates they were actually quite widespread and abundant during the late Jurassic. It is also believed that they lived in herds or family units based on bone beds that show multiple remains of multiple individuals, which is quite cool. They had bulbous, blunt, and slightly recurved teeth, and they're believed to have homodont dentition, which means they all had the same sort of teeth. This, combined with its shovel-like snout, suggests that these guys would have basically been used for digging and holding objects. It is also believed that they could have dug for food in the soft mud near bodies of water, due to the abundance of lakes in the formations where they're found. So it does make sense. Definitely does make sense, but maybe not would have been the only thing, but yeah, it would have been helpful. As well, it is unknown whether they replaced their teeth, and if so, how, but the low number of teeth indicates they were only held in place by soft tissue connections. And the jaw articulation point was below the tooth line, and holding its upper and lower tooth rows parallel, in a way that's actually quite similar to Ornithischian dinosaurs. So it's a great example of convergent evolution. The armor and spikes of Desmatosuchus were its only defense against predators. The lateral spike rows showed variation in size amongst individuals, especially in the second most anterior spike, and the spike was always shorter than the one in front of it, but the extent we don't really know, and this has been hypothesized to be sexually dimorphic and be a form of sexual display. And apart from its armor, they were defenseless against carnivores, and several Desmatosuchus bones have been found alongside the skeletons of Postosuchus, which indicating predation as well. And the herd nature likely did little discourage them, as Postosuchus also may have travelled in groups as well, as we'll get into next. So most theropods of the late Jurassic lacked surf and pelvic features that aided locomotion, but thus, in spite of their upright posture, they were only slightly more mobile than sprawling reptiles, so they didn't have the same adaptations like dinosaurs did to, be standing up tall and stuff like that. But they possess both of these features, along with a long femur and elongated pubis, which made them the most mobile of all the theropods at the time. And this, along with their size, abundance, and specialized beaks, actually makes them one of the chief herbivores of their environment. And it's also been suggested that these guys could have been omnivores or even insectivores. This is based on several similarities between Desmatosuchus and armadillos. For instance, both are armoured, both have long snouts and lack teeth at the end, and there is also evidence of bees and wasps and termites in the late Jurassic, which means they had access to the insects that modern armadillos would prey on. Their teeth are also somewhat similar, but armadillos have more peg-like teeth, and both Desmatosuchus and armadillos typically carry about 6 teeth on their dentaries. And they also both have hypertrophied processes present on their limb bones, which suggests that they would have large limb muscles. This connection, though, was more tenuous, however, since Desmatosuchus actually had a crest over its hind limbs but lacks one on their forelimbs, meaning that they likely didn't have the same musculature for digging of their forelimbs that armadillos would have. And in spite of these parallels, even though it's probably just convergence, like bigger glyptodonts, the general consensus that they were most likely herbivores, and that seems to be pretty reasonable. But yeah, really cool. Nice animal there. Really love the details and all that. Did a really good job. And this one, actually, the females have the bigger spikes, not the males. So you can see the males got the shorter spikes, and the females got the bigger one, which is interesting. So we'll let them actually do their thing. Are you gonna let them do their socials after they walk into each other? Very cute. Look at you going off doing your thing. I love this Desmatosuchus. So cool to get these in the game finally. Alright. So let's go here. Alright, now we're going to go and have a look at our next animal. So this is, now we're done Desmatosuchus. Now we've got another Jurassic creature. We've got Postosuchus. Now I have to say this Postosuchus absolutely amazing.
Postosuchus to the park.
Now look at that. Isn't that impressive? I'm just in love with this Postosuchus. Look at you. I like how you posed. This is Postosuchus. Look at that. Wow, I'm just in love with the scale detail. They did a great job. And look, they put lips on it. How great is that? It literally looks pretty much just like a real Postosuchus to me. Great job, Frontier. You nailed it. You absolutely nailed it. So, Postosuchus. In ancient Greek means the crocodile from Post. So these belong to an extinct group of ravasukid reptilians, or reptiles. Basically, the theropods before they were theropods. And there's two species, Kirkpatricki and Ellisoni, that lived during North America of what is now the late Jurassic. So the Postosuchus is actually a member of the clade Pseudosuchia, which is the lineage of archosaurs that include modern crocodilians, rather than the other group being Aviometatarsalia, which includes archosaurs that are more closely related to birds, like dinosaurs and pterosaurs. These are kind of more related to crocodiles. The name refers to the Post Quarry, a place in Texas where they find many fossils of the type species Kirkpatricki where it's found. So these guys kind of have the honor for being one of the largest carnivores of the Jurassic, especially late Jurassic, kind of like the T-Rex before it was T-Rex. The neck of Postosuchus consists of at least 8 cervical vertebrae, followed by 6 dorsal vertebrae, while 2 co-ossified sacral vertebrae supported the hips. And it was previously described as 4, but that was actually from Suvosaurus. And they also have identified osteoderms, which is thick plates forming the skin, forming scales on its back, neck, and possibly under the tail. And it's also its pelvis, and it's with the hooked pubis and rod-like ischium, so it superficially looks like that of carnosaurs or theropods. And the ribs have the typical rib cages, typical of archosaurs, and comprising of large, slender ribs. And they do have gastralia as well. So these guys have a very interesting skull. They had a massively built skull, as you see there, with dagger-like teeth. They were constricted narrow in the front and extended wide and deep behind. The holotype skull was about 55 centimeters in length and about 21 centimeters broad and deep. And like more derived archosaurs, their lower jaw had mandibular fenestrae, formed by the junction of the dentary and other jaw bones. And they actually contained a Jacobson organ as well. And they do have some pretty big teeth as well. Their bigger teeth are about 8 centimeters long. So about their posture, there has been some debate about their posture. I'm sure you guys may have remembered them if you watched Walking with Dinosaurs, where it's kind of most famous. There was walking around on 4 legs. Here we see it walking on 2. There has been a bit of debate on their posture. So with the forelimbs being about 64% the size of the hind limbs, they had small hands with 5 fingers as well, which only the first digit bore a claw. Due to this diminutive size of the hands, whether the claws were extremely predominant in predation is uncertain, but they may have helped with grappling prey. The feet were much larger, its hands, and with the 5th metacarpal putting a hooked shape, and the custodian, the head and ankle of these guys were more on crocodiles. So I'll actually quickly stop you there, and we'll have a look at this guy. So you can see these guys are very plantigrade. Their feet are very much like modern crocodiles. So that's the heel. They walk on their heels like we do. We're plantigrade. Theropods that you typically see are digitigrade, so the heel is off the ground and they're walking on their toes. So that's a kind of easy way to tell that this is not a dinosaur. This is a Archosaur. The limbs were located underneath the body and gave them an upright start, but there has been debate whether they're quadrupedal or bipedal. Each one of Postosuchus' 2 front limbs was slightly over half the size of the hind limbs, and they're characterized by short forelimbs as well, as seen in bipedal reptiles. And there has been some debate, but there was a major studies looking into it. In 2013, there was a major study finding they were obligate bipeds, and the most recent consensus as of 2022 was considered predominantly bipedal, but probably still capable of supporting its weight on its forelimbs at low speeds, and an ontogenetic shift was noted with the shortening of the arms as individual ages, such as that juveniles were quadrupeds, and maybe they became bipeds as they got older. So they were first discovered in 1980. Paleontologists of the Texas Tech University found a site near Post Garza County in Texas where they found them, but they have been found in other places. They've been found in, as I mentioned, Texas, but also New Mexico, North Carolina, and Arizona and New Mexico. It's quite interesting there. The holotype itself is actually a well-preserved skeleton, skull with a partial postcranial skeleton as well. And there is another species that is described. It was described in 1992. The specific name actually refers to Allison L. Chambers, who popularized paleontology in North Carolina. The type species is named after Kirkpatrick, which I believe is after one of the discoverers as well. And there have been some other discussions about where they occurred and stuff like that. But yeah, they're very, very cool animals. So Postosuchus, we believe that Postosuchus would have lived in a tropical environment, with the moist and warm regions of ferns and lots of things like that. Plants of the Dockland Formation are not well known since the oxidizing of the environment destroyed most of the plant fossils. However, there is some information about the climate. They probably would have lived in a very rich habitat. It was actually among the largest animals of its habitat, again the T-Rex of its time. It preyed upon herbivores such as the Diectodon placerius. Also, the rivers were filled with cartilaginous sharks and lobe-finned fishes. Some of the bigger reptiles had been encountering like Ornithodonts, but also Trilophosaurus, Bilosaurus, Archosaurs like Coelophysis, Desmatosuchus, Triprothorax, Leptosuchus, Neurosaurus, and Rutodon. So very rich formation with lots of different animals. I have to say, I'm just super duper impressed with how this looks. I'm just super impressed with this model. Done a really good job. Definitely worth the money. And we'll see them do their little thing. We're gonna do a social animation. You gonna do a social animation? Just running away right away. Such a cool little guy. I'm a big fan. They're not going to do the social, I think. That's alright, we can move on to another animal. So we're going to move on to our last animal today. We've got Deinosuchus. This is now another time I've covered it, because we just had it for our last, part for our mod spotlights, since there's not many mods being produced for Jurassic World Evolution 3 at the moment, since they have decided to stop supporting the awesome Cobra edit tools and stuff like that. ASGE, AGC or something like that. But very, very excited to talk about this one. This is, finally, we've been wanting this. This is probably one of the most requested animals for Jurassic World Evolution 3. We have got Deinosuchus.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to welcome a Deinosuchus to the park.
If you look at that, I'll never look at this one because I think her pattern's a little bit more impressive. But we'll hide the dinosaur statistics, just because I want to actually watch these guys walking around and stuff like that, because they actually do proper swim and move like crocodiles. I'm super impressed by this, by the way. But But anyway, this is Deinosuchus. So Deinosuchus is an extinct genus of Eusuchian. There was actually some debate whether it was a alligatoroid, so related to alligators and caimans, or its own stem group Crocodilian, that lived during the late Cretaceous of about 82 to 73 million years ago. So it was first discovered in North Carolina in the 1850s, when the genus was first described in 1909. And then other fragments were discovered in the 1940s that were lately incorporated into the influential, though inaccurate, skull, a reconstruction at the American Museum of Natural History. So very, very cool animal. So it was first discovered, as I mentioned, 1858 by Inizo Emmons, who originally found the teeth and called it Polyclodon. It was actually thought to have been, this discovery showed that the teeth were from a phytosaur. And then several osteoderms were found in 1903 in Willow Creek, Montana. And they were found in the soil, and they were thought to belong to the Ankylosaurid Euoplocephalus, but turns out they belong to a crocodile. And Deinosuchus means, in Latin, terrible crocodile. There was also some more expeditions that found a little bit more evidence and looking about what they got, what they looked like. But yeah, very, very cool. So since they would come from Deinosuchus, a crocodilian, they were thought to be a relative of modern alligators and caimans. But more recent studies actually suggests, like especially in 2025, they argued that many of the features that were thought to be allied with these guys were actually from something completely different. You see them sitting there. Amazing. It's so cool. I love how they've done these crocodiles. It's definitely a really, really great animal to put in here. Anyway, they were found that several traits that they put in that suggested they were actually crocodilians. Actually, they were found to be Eusuchians, so they were found not only fall outside that, so they're outside that group. So they're not that closely related to modern alligators and caimans, and any reason they look like that is because of convergent evolution. So because she's swimming out, we'll go have a look at the male. Because he's swimming in there. He looks quite cool in there, doesn't he? But yeah, really cool. Despite their large size, their overall appearance is actually not that different from most crocodilians. Crocodilians, for the most part, especially when they're living in semi-aquatic lifestyles, they tend to be very convergent in their ways. Very alligator-like broad snout, but they had a slightly bulbous tip. They contained teeth, so each mixture they had about 23 teeth, and the lowest count was in the dentary, which had 22. They had very thick and robust teeth, like modern alligators, likely for crushing stuff like that. And modern saltwater crocodiles have a very strong bite force of about 16,000 newtons, so it's estimated that the bite force of a large Deinosuchus would be about 18,000 to 102,000 newtons, which I find is really impressive as well. They also, like modern crocodilians, have a bony palate to help them breathe through their nostrils and keep while the rest of their head is submerged underwater as well. And the osteoderms covering the back of these guys were unusually large, heavy, and deeply pitted as well. So these guys may have actually served as load-bearing reinforcement to support the massive body of Deinosuchus out of the water. However, more recent analysis of the taxon's hindlimb biomechanics found that Deinosuchus would have run into issues generating muscular force to support its body to walk like this high walk that it's doing. So these guys would likely, more, if they were on land, they would be doing a lot of belly dragging and stuff like that. And these guys were likely, because of their large size, would be more aquatic than likely more modern crocodilians. So very much a aquatic animal, but obviously would come onto land occasionally. Very, very cool. So Deinosuchus has been a bit of debate about its size and things like that. The large size of Deinosuchus has generally been recognized despite its fragmentary nature. The original estimates was like a skull of 1.5 meters and estimated to be about 15 meters long. So yeah, very, very very nice of you. Anyway, so these estimates have played around quite a bit, as they do. The most recent estimates have put them at about varied, but the most recent estimates are about 8 to 10 meters and about 2.5 to 5 metric tons. The most recent ones actually estimated 7 to 8 meters as well for Hatcherai, which was using regression based on modern crocodilians. So that's kind of the most recent estimates. The biggest the biggest specimens we've got here, let's see. Yeah, so it was up to about 9 meters long, and sometimes, people kind of over-exaggerate its kind of giantness in some regards. But there's also the most recent estimates we've got here. So in 2025 is the most recent one. There was a particularly large skull of a species, Rio Grandis today, about 147 centimeters long. In the 2025 reclassification, they had found that they had a relatively long snout, but these were based on taxa of American crocodiles. They estimated a mass body size for a couple of the species of Deinosuchus to be about 10 meters and 7 meters, or 34 feet to 7.25 feet, respectively. And a mean body length of about 6 meters and 4.8.3, so a little bit bigger than a crocodile. Modern saltwater crocodile. So yeah, not as kind of as stupid impressive as they as we kind of imagined them as, but still a very large crocodile. Average size would have been about the same size as modern giant or modern very impressive big male saltwater crocodiles. So that's still a huge animal, regardless. So in terms of paleobiology, what did it eat? There was actually some speculation that they would have hunted dinosaurs, and certainly they would have hunted dinosaurs. And there's actually evidence of a tyrannosaurid leg bone with bite marks that come from likely a Deinosuchus. And there are hadrosaur tail vertebrae with evidence of that marks as well. So they likely would have hunted dinosaurs when they got the chance. That's very cool as well. They've also proposed they would have eaten marine turtles, which also makes sense since a lot of alligators do feed on marine turtles and stuff like that. And they also concluded in 2022 that they likely would have eaten different things based on their location. Very similar opportunistic feeders to modern American alligators. They would have, if they saw a dinosaur, they would have eaten it. Saw a turtle, they would have eaten it. If they saw a large fish, they would have given it a go. Pretty much what goes on with most large crocodilians today. So in terms of growth rates, they actually also found that the growth rate of Deinosuchus was actually the same as modern crocodilians, but they were just grown for much longer. So these guys are believed to have lived for more than 50 years, and they would have taken about 35 years to reach adult size, which is very cool as well. And in terms of the paleoecology, there is a few different species. There's Hatcherai, Rio Grandis today, and I forgot the third one. Let me see if I can find what the third one was. Oh, didn't really need to do that. So the third species I forgot the name of is Swimmeridae. There it is. So these guys, in terms of their paleoecology, they would have lived actually in America, on both sides of the Western Interior Seaway. So specimens have been found in 12 US states, Utah, Montana, Wyoming, New Mexico, New Jersey, Delaware, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Texas, and North and South Carolina. And there also one from the Santa Carlos Formation that was also reported in 2006. So they likely would have lived even in more northern Mexico as well. So the distribution of these guys suggests that they may have actually preferred, estuarine environments or brackish water, which does make sense. Crocodiles do venture in that today, and our largest alligators as well, but our largest crocodilians today, saltwater crocodiles live estuarine and even swim across oceans, which makes sense. The Western Interior Seaway was not a particularly big ocean as well. All known specimens from Deinosuchus, though, lived during the Campanian age of the late Cretaceous, which means they lived about 82 million years ago, and the youngest living about 73 million years ago. So the distribution of Deinosuchus specimens I've already mentioned that. In the Augusta Formation, some of the largest specimens have been found in brackish water bays, and also some specimens have been found in marine deposits. It is not clear whether they ventured out into oceans like modern saltwater crocodilians, or simply may have just died and gone out to sea that way. It was also suggested that the presence of Deinosuchus may have actually been the reason why there were a lack of very large predatory theropods in the late Cretaceous of Appalachia, with these guys kind of replacing large theropods as the top predators of the coastal plains. I'm not sure how true that would work out, and that holds up, but still very, very cool crocodilian. How can you not love a nice Deinosuchus? And I actually love that we managed to finally get this in game. It's such a cool animal. Look at him basking there. You're going to do a little scratchy scratch. That is cute. They literally nailed the crocodile vibes of it. And it does do death rolls. A lot of the animals it does eat, it does do death rolls, which I think is very cool. I just want to see if I can get it swimming. It's having a sleep there. I think they really nailed it with the JWE kind of frame there. Looks really cool. Anyway, I think this is a great place to end the video. So really, really cool pack, yeah. And I will say, because I'll be moving in the next few weeks, I'm going to try and get a video, record like 3 or so videos that I've got lined up so I can have something to do while I'm, away and moving and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a big life change for me, so we'll get sorted. Now I'm going to be doing bird shows, which I'm really excited to be doing. So yeah, I'm really, really excited about that, and I really, really, really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys like and subscribe. Always remember to hit the little bell icon to get notified about new things. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video, hope you guys like and subscribe, and bye-bye.